There's a generation you've probably never heard of. They're not Gen X, they're not Millennials, they're called Xennials, and psychologically, they might just have the ultimate advantage. Hey everyone, today we're diving into something fascinating, a psychological battle between two generations that share more than just birth years. We're talking about Xennials versus Millennials, and trust me, the results, they're going to surprise you. Let's get into it. First things first, who exactly are Xennials? Xennials were born between 1977 and 1983. That's right, only 6 years. There's this tiny micro-generation of about 25 million people in the US alone. They're called the Oregon Trail generation. You know, that computer game where your character always died of dysentery? Now, millennials, born between 1981 and 1996, that's 72 million people, the largest workforce generation in history. But here's where it gets interesting. These two generations overlap, and that overlap, it creates something psychologically unique. Let's talk about what makes Xennials special. Picture this. You grew up with rotary phones and Saturday morning cartoons. No internet, no smartphones, no social media. You learned to be bored. You played outside until the streetlights came on. Then as an adult, the internet arrived. Email, Google, Facebook. You adapted. And here's where the psychological magic happens. Research shows that Xennials have something called dual world adaptability. They understand both the analog world and the digital world. They're natural bridge builders. And get this, studies show that older generations, including Xennials, have higher stress resilience than younger millennials. Why? Because they developed coping mechanisms without the constant dopamine hits of technology. They learned patience, problem solving, delayed gratification. Plus, they got lucky. They bought homes before the 2008 housing crisis. They had lower student debt. They missed the era of cyberbullying and social media anxiety. Psychologically, they had fewer digital wounds. But hold on, before you think Xennials win this battle, let's talk about where millennials dominate. Millennials are the most educated generation in history. 39% hold bachelor's degrees or higher. Compare that to 29% of Gen X and 25% of boomers. But here's the real kicker. Emotional intelligence. Multiple studies show that millennials score higher in 3 out of 4 emotional intelligence traits. Empathy? Check. Collaboration? Check. Self-awareness? Check. They're also the generation that normalized talking about mental health. Therapy isn't taboo anymore. Anxiety and depression aren't hidden. Millennials broke the stigma. And that takes courage. Plus, let's be real, millennials are tech natives. They don't just adapt to technology, they breathe it. They learn faster, they innovate faster, they pivot faster. In a world that's changing every single day, that's a massive psychological advantage. So, here's the truth. This isn't about who's better. It's about understanding what each generation brings to the table. Xennials have resilience, they have patience, they have the ability to disconnect and recharge. Millennials have adaptability, they have emotional intelligence, they have the courage to be vulnerable. Here's what the research actually shows. Mental health diagnoses: Gen Z, 30% anxiety, 22% depression. Millennials, 21% anxiety, 19% depression. Gen X, 14% anxiety, 13% depression. Younger generations are struggling more, but they're also fighting for better mental health support, and that's powerful. Meanwhile, Xennials quietly handle stress with their old-school coping skills. Different approaches, both valid. The real winner, workplaces and communities that learn from both. So, what do you think? Are you Team Xennial with that analog-digital balance, or Team Millennial with that emotional intelligence edge? Drop a comment below and let's talk about it. And if you learned something new today, hit that like button. Subscribe for more psychology deep dives. Because whether you're a Xennial, a Millennial, or somewhere in between, understanding the psychology of generations helps us understand ourselves. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.